Howdy folks, I'm Tyler Henderson. Thanks so much for joining us here for East Texas in Focus. Let's go ahead and get started. Now that the agenda is set, we know what's included tonight. We are focusing once again on the upcoming special session that begins Monday. Last week, Governor Greg Abbott, who controls the agenda for overtime legislation sessions, unveiled a jam-packed list of 18 priorities. He's calling on lawmakers to redraw Texas congressional maps and address several unfinished priorities from earlier in the year. But as expected, Abbott's agenda for the session includes legislation to more firmly regulate THC products, looking at new restrictions to keep them from children as well. Also included are proposals to ban cities and counties from hiring lobbyists to advocate for them in Austin, requiring people to use bathrooms that align with the sex they were assigned at birth, and cracking down on the manufacturing and distribution of abortion pills. When the session begins on Monday, lawmakers will meet amid immense heartache following the devastating floods in the Texas Hill Country over the July 4th weekend. There's more than a summer's worth of rain that fell in Kerr County overnight leading into July 4th that swelled the Guadalupe River and turned the beloved waterway into a deadly torrent. As of this week, officials say the flooding killed at least 130 people, with more than 100 still missing. According to the sheriff in Kerr County, the epicenter of the disaster, search efforts could continue for months. In the county alone, there were at least 106 deaths, including 36 children. This week, heavy rain has further hindered search efforts, even forcing search and recovery operations to start and then restart. Included on Governor Abbott's agenda for the special session are 4 items relating to what could become the deadliest flood in Texas history. Legislators say they not only have to address the urgent needs facing Central Texas right now, but they're also looking at how and why so many people were in harm's way. And they also want to focus on long-term solutions. These measures would address the state's flood warning systems, flood emergency communications, natural disaster preparation, and recovery and relief funding for those impacted areas. Our crews have been on the ground for the last 2 weeks covering the tragedy. Here's a look at the devastation and the hope that could come out of this upcoming special session.
We thought it was going to be bad, but we didn't think it was going to be this bad.
Catalina Valdez and her husband own a 1011 Bistro in Kerrville, a fine dining restaurant overlooking the Guadalupe River. Over the holiday weekend, their defining features all lost.
The downstairs is the walk-in cooler, the AC units, water heater, wine inventory, and all the food inventory, and my husband's office. It was completely flooded. In
just a few days, lawmakers will gather 140 miles east of Kerrville for a 30-day special session. So far, there's been a commitment to address the threat of Flash Flood Alley.
As mayor of Kerrville, as someone who grew up here, I am grateful for their support, and I look forward to what they proposed during the special session.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says there should be flood sirens up and down Flash Flood Alley.
For us to provide real solutions, we actually need to hear from the people who are the ones most affected.
The governor agreed, listing flood warning systems, flood emergency communications, relief funding for the Hill Country, and natural disaster preparedness and recovery as topics for the special session. While a legislator can't do anything to undo the damage of the floods, they may be able to help the Hill Country recover as soon as possible.
We're trying to just clean everything up and trying to do our best.
Well, earlier this week, House Speaker Representative Dustin Burrows named 6 Republican state representatives and 3 Democrats to serve on the Disaster Preparedness and Flooding Committee. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has also named the 9 senators to the panel. The House and Senate Joint Committee will then first meet on July 23rd in Austin and then in Kerrville on July the 31st. There they plan to hear from Hill Country residents regarding their flood-related concerns. Both Patrick and Burrows have stated that their committees will meet jointly to find any common solutions. Another topic at the top of mind of legislators and Texans, a ban on THC product. The ban on consumable hemp products that contain any THC easily passed the Senate, then overcame scattered opposition in the House. Abbott vetoed the bill last month, saying it would not have survived valid constitutional challenges. State Capitol reporter Adam Schwager has a look at the fight ahead.
Looks like you're going to be back here in another few weeks, right?
Less than a day after his proposed ban on THC was vetoed by Governor Greg Abbott,
Thank you all for coming.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick indicated a refusal to back down.
I'm not going to legalize marijuana in Texas. And if people want to vote me out of office for that, so be it. Not going to do it.
Since then, Patrick's gotten bolder. In his veto, Abbott cited a ban in Arkansas, which at the time was held up in court. After the court ruled Arkansas can enforce their ban on Tuesday, Patrick reacted by saying, "All we have to do is pass SB 3. However, Abbott reaffirmed his position to regulate rather than prohibit consumable hemp, saying that process begins next month.
I'm watching Texas very closely.
Roger Wolodarski is the founder and CEO of Puffco, a company which makes high-tech products for consuming THC-infused concentrates.
If Texas is able to flip and offer safe access to users, that is a great omen for the future of cannabis in the federal world as well.
First glance, Wolodarski agrees with many of Abbott's proposed reforms, finding a balance between safety and freedom.
Lab testing, labeling, age-restricted access, the things that we're doing in all of the other states should be rolled out in Texas to make sure it's not getting in the hands of kids and the people who are using it are able to use safe product.
But he does not want to see the state shut down the ability to smoke THC products, a regulation currently found in the state's medical marijuana program.
You can't just eat an edible and then go on with your day. You're going to be affected by it for hours. But if you do inhale something, especially cannabis concentrates, you can get what you need from it, and it goes away within 45 minutes to an hour.
Lawmakers will come back to Austin on July 21st to discuss regulating THC. In Austin, I'm Adam Schwager.
Well, according to a June statewide poll from the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas at Austin, a majority of Texans, 53% to be exact, oppose that ban. 31% of voters voiced support for the ban.
What Republicans are trying to do in Texas is to have politicians choose their voters and undermine free and fair elections.
Democrats say they're outraged this evening, and they claim President Donald Trump and Governor Greg Abbott are making moves to take 5 Texas congressional seats away from their control in an effort to protect the slim Republican majority in the 2026 midterm elections. Now, every 10 years following the U.S. Census, political maps are redrawn to ensure Americans are being properly represented in Washington. Democrats claim doing this halfway through the decade is a threat to democracy. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is accusing President Donald Trump, House Republicans, and Governor Abbott of conspiring to rig the Texas congressional map in the GOP's favor. Redistricting is one of the items Texas legislators will be considering in the upcoming special legislative session. And we recently spoke with State Representative Daniel Alders from Tyler. He explains why he supports that move.
Redistricting, that's an issue that's important to the future of the country, and we need to make sure we get something done on that.
Redistricting efforts are one of the 18 items included in the governor's agenda for that special session. That's a pretty good start here, but when we return with East Texas in Focus, we're going to hear from East Texas lawmakers about what to expect from Austin starting Monday. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. This upcoming Monday, state lawmakers are going to return to Austin for a special session. That session will kick off at noon, and they've filed 95 bills so far. On Wednesday, 2 bills were filed related to the Central Texas flooding, and so far, no bills have been filed on redistricting, but state lawmakers have filed bills to reduce property taxes, ban taxpayer-funded lobbying, and crack down on access to abortion medications, among other things as well. Only bills that relate to topics on Abbott's agenda are permitted to be filed. Recently, we had the opportunity to hear from 2 East Texas state representatives that are gearing up for that special session. That includes Daniel Alders from Tyler. This will be the first special session for Alders, and he has filed 2 bills. House Bill 96 relating to the date and requirements regarding an election to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds or other debt obligations payable from ad valorem taxes, or to approve an increase in an ad valorem tax rate. He also filed House Joint Resolution 14, which proposes a constitutional amendment to require a supermajority vote to authorize a political subdivision to issue general obligation bonds or other debt obligations payable from ad valorem Texas. Now, our morning anchor Nolan Hoffman sat down with alders about his priorities and what he expects starting next week. Here's part of that conversation.
We're now joined by State Rep Daniel Alters for District 6 of the Texas House to give us a preview of the special session coming up on July 21st and all of the 18 agenda items. Daniel, thanks for coming in on this Friday. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Nolan.
Of course. So I want to get to, before I get to other stuff, I'm guessing you guys are going to be focusing heavily on providing support and relief for everybody who was impacted in those catastrophic Central Texas floods.
Absolutely. We're heartbroken to see the catastrophe that has occurred across the Hill Country and the impact of these floods on families' lives, not only across the state of Texas, but across the country. Folks that have been sending their kids to these camps for years and generations. It's a tragedy, and I'm grateful for the governor for putting this on the call for our special session coming up in a couple of weeks, because there is more that we can do to ensure that the emergency communications systems are in place so that Texans are aware when a natural disaster is occurring. We have measures in place where they know something's coming. You know, here in East Texas, we have tornado sirens that go off, and you can actually hear them in your home, from various key locations around the community. And I think something like that, where residents or folks who are camping along the river, they actually can hear some kind of a warning system. I think that's going to be something that's going to be important for our conversation during this upcoming special session, so that we have the tools in place for Texans to be safe and protected.
The STAR test is also on that list. I guess right. if you grew up here in Texas, you either love it, you either hate it. I didn't grow up taking it. I was back in Pennsylvania. But you told me about during our live interview this morning, a lot of lawmakers are on that side of supporting eliminating it and maybe finding something more effective. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what we found in conversation, not only in the chamber, but I mean, as we were campaigning and talking with our educators here in East Texas and in District 6 here in Smith County, is there were a few priorities for educators. One, you needed to be able to pay your teachers more, and we needed to see dollars go to the classroom. We fixed that during the legislative session this year. We provided a historic $8.5 billion in additional funding, and a lot of that, like nearly half of that, was geared towards getting those funds into classrooms and to teachers. But the number two issue was the STAR test. It was a frustration for teachers, and I think it's a frustration for parents and students as well, because it wasn't effective in ensuring that students continue to learn. You've got teachers who are teaching to the test, administrators who are feeling this pressure to make sure that they're strategizing all year long on how to make sure they perform to the test, and that's not what education is about. It's about a whole lot of maturing that is occurring in the classroom, and teachers are the most important, aside from a parent, the most important people in a child's life. And so we wanted to see an opportunity for that evaluation to change and be more in line with what we want to see teachers able to do in the classroom, and allow them to perform the way their students are going to be best served.
Then property taxes, that's the thing a lot of other Texans are going to be watching out for. Mm-hmm. What more can you tell us specifically you guys are going to be focusing on with cutting property taxes? Well,
as you know, the state does not levy property taxes at the state level. And so the challenge has been over the last several years, what can the state do with the revenue that we generate from sales taxes, from oil and gas, from franchise taxes? What can we do to take in the revenue that we're getting from other avenues and buy down the property tax burden that local constituents are feeling? And so the state has been aggressively buying down the school M&O, maintenance operations taxes, to lower that property tax burden. But there's more that we can do. The state continues to be successful. We don't have an income tax. People want to be here. The economy is growing. That's great. but our property taxes continue to rise. And so there's accountability. There are reforms that are needed at the local level as far as appraisal districts and valuations that I think would be helpful. And we're going to get a significant amount of money back from the federal government for the efforts the state has taken on in border security over the last several years. So I think that a significant portion of that should be geared towards continuing to relieve that property tax burden. But there's more we've got to do to ensure that the system in place at the local level is one that's not taking advantage of local citizens and their ability to pay taxes. So we need to ensure that they're being accountable to the citizens. There's things we can do to move the bond elections that currently occur in May, move those to November, to where more constituents are participating in the election. If you're going to increase bond debt locally, then the most constituents as possible need to be participating in that election and saying, look, this is the time for investment, historic investment. We're willing to take on this new debt, and we understand this is going to increase our property taxes. In May, it's really difficult to get that kind of turnout. People are burnt out on elections by the time you get done with the primary season and a special election or a runoff. They're done, and there's a lot going on in May. It's best if we move those bond elections to November, I think, and everyone expects items to be on the ballot. I think that would be a key part of the reforms that are necessary to curb the increase in property taxes in the state.
Out of all the items, and when it's all said and done, when the special session ends, what do you guys have to get done there before the special session ends? What's the #1 priority right now, at least in your opinion?
In my opinion, I know that, I know the governor wants to see the flood emergency response issue resolved, and I think you're going to see everybody come together to get that done. I think the THC issue is going to be one that is front and center, and we've got to get that done during a special session. If we don't get the job done, I don't want to imagine what the governor is going to do if we don't get something accomplished. We're going to be more than likely back down there again. So those two things are a priority, and I think the third is going to be redistricting. That's an issue that's important to the future of the country, and we need to make sure we get something done on that.
Well, you can watch that full interview with Representative Alders on our website, KETK.com. But when we return, we're going to hear about the special session from State Representative Cole Hefner out of Mount Pleasant. Don't go anywhere. Let's get back in a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Cole Hefner, who represents people from Camp, Rains, Smith, Titus, Upshur, and Wood counties, has been a member of the Texas House of Representatives since 2017. He spoke with our morning anchor, Nolan Hoffman, about some of his priorities for this upcoming special session and what he expects. This is what he had to say.
Studio is East Texas State Representative Cole Hefner, who represents House District 5, to give us some more insight on what to expect. Cole, thanks for making the trip this morning.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I was talking to Daniel Alters on Friday about this, but I'm guessing a lot of the stuff, the focus is going to be on providing support and funding for everybody affected down in Central Texas by that catastrophic flooding.
Yeah, the governor and the lieutenant governor and the Speaker of the House are forming a special committee to look in what could have been done to be better prepared, looking for funding, better communications, and just things that we could do to help keep people safe in the future, to determine what could have been done, if anything, and then make that happen.
When it comes with the funding and support, what might all that look like? I know it's too early to tell, but that's a big-time priority for the governor right now, as thousands have been affected by this.
Yeah, it's something that you'll see local government, state government, and the federal government come in and kind of partner up. And so I think the state will come in and kind of fill some of those gaps. We're going to try to, speed things up, kind of streamline things to ensure that communications are in order, preparedness, response times, and then just helping people recover. And so sometimes the federal government can move a little slow. And so we want to step in and fill those gaps. My understanding from people on the ground is that, the partnership between the local and the state and federal government has been working really well. And so we just want to make sure that we can, if there's something we can do better going forward.
I want to switch over to THC right now. Of course, that was a big-time subject in the regular legislative session. Of course, Governor Greg Abbott vetoed Senate Bill 3 that would have banned all former products with THC, not including the state compassionate use program. What exactly is the governor looking to accomplish with THC in the special session coming up next Monday?
You know, I think obviously we want to keep this out of the hands of children. We want to keep it away from our schools and parks and places where kids may be. And so I think he's probably looking at some sort of pretty strict regulation on it and protecting kids from it. And so that's a subject that's going to be interesting to see how it works out through the process. You know, the process is designed for debate and discussion and research, and so I think we'll see some pretty robust debate on that issue going forward.
Of the 18 agenda items, is there something that maybe you think is flying under the radar, that maybe a topic that a lot of people aren't talking about, getting a lot of media coverage, whatever you want to say about it, that you're focusing on, that you think is really important, but maybe it's not getting talked about enough?
You know, I think they're all important. You know, we have an issue. One of the items is a bill that we carried to protect the certain personnel records of police officers in their employment file, and so we're looking forward to working on that one as well as the rest of them. So I think they're all important. Hopefully, we'll get to address each one of them and in a timely manner. You know, these sessions are supposed to be 30-day sessions, so hopefully we can get in there and get it worked out quickly and get back home to our families and our businesses.
And then what can East Texas expect with property tax cuts potentially?
You know, we did about $10 or $11 billion in this last session, which brought the total in our current budget to $51 billion that is dedicated to property tax relief, and that's the total that we've passed from bills passed and sessions passed. So, you know, stricter spending limits maybe on governments, and then other places of relief. And so, you know, the idea is to someday get to a zero tax rate on the school M&O property tax portion of your bill, and so we'll keep whittling away at it, and hopefully we get there. So looking forward to that discussion.
All right, well, State Rep Hefner, thanks for coming on this Monday. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you can watch that full interview with Representative Hefner on our website, KETK.com as well. But stick around after the break. We've got the final topics included in the agenda for the upcoming special session. We'll be back. Welcome back. We only touched on some of the 18 items included on the governor's agenda for the special session that begins on Monday. Now, when it comes to election interference, Abbott is also directing lawmakers to reconsider a proposal to allow the Attorney General to prosecute state election crimes, an authority he does not have unless invited to do so by a local district attorney. Here are some of the other issues included: the creation of laws that would shield records accusing police officers of wrongdoing that are not substantiated, boosting protections against title and deed thefts, and authorizing political subdivisions to reduce fees for certain builders. Since taking office in 2015, Abbott has called at least 8 other overtime sessions, including 4 of them in 2023, keeping lawmakers at the Capitol for almost an entire year. This year we will have to wait and see, but regardless of the outcomes, these decisions will affect and bring significant changes to the lives of every Texan. The next regular session will happen in 2027, and remember, your vote is your voice. Stay tuned for our coverage of the special session starting Monday, but that's going to do it for this edition of East Texas in Focus. God bless. Have a great night, everybody.